Welcome to the Corporate Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McWhorter. I'm a corporate dropout, recovering people pleaser and perfectionist turned burnout recovery coach. If you're sick of the corporate roller coaster ride and ready to step into a life that you love, this is the podcast for you. Hey there, and welcome back to the Corporate Detox Podcast. This is episode 5, and today I am joined by Sharri Freedman. Sharri is a certified divorce, co-parenting, and relationship coach, as well as a certified trauma-informed mindset and energy coach. Combining her almost 30 years of legal wisdom and experience as a family law attorney with her knowledge of the nervous system, trauma, and mindset, she helps clients end the cycle of indecision, worry, and fear so they can move forward with peace of mind, confidence, and grace. Sharri provides practical, strategic, and emotional support, saving her clients time, money, and their sanity before, during, and after divorce. Sharri, I am so happy that you are joining me today on the podcast. You have been one of the guests that I have really, I know I want to have you on here more often, quite honestly, but I feel like the work that you do is so important, especially for folks in the corporate world. So with that, if you want to go ahead, I know that you didn't necessarily leave a corporate job, but I do feel that in law, it's a lot of the same similarities. So if you want to go ahead and just give us a little bit of background on kind of your professional life and how you started your own business, I would love it.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to share some of my wisdom and experience with all of your listeners. And yes, so I am a family law attorney by profession. I've been a divorce professional for almost 30 years now and actively practiced for 17 of those years. And, law, like the corporate world, is very not very forgiving as far as the hours and the time commitment and the expectations that are there, not just from your boss or from your partners or other associates, but also yourself. As far as, you've gone through all the schooling and expense. And then if you do decide to step back, which I did, what does that mean about me? And what are those expectations from, your family members, from your spouse, perhaps, from yourself? If you're choosing to kind of step away from that career that you're building, and then what does that mean as far as advancement? So when I left the active practice of law, I had been working part-time, which is basically unheard of in the legal world. And part-time was truly part-time, because for most lawyers, part-time is actually 40 hours, which is crazy, right? And there were many times where I did work 60, 70 hours when I was working full-time. And when you have a trial, there is no okay, it's 5 o'clock, I'm leaving. Like if your trial is the next day, you're going to work until you're ready and prepared and go. And you might start your day super early in the morning just because you want to be prepared for that. So when I was thinking about what do I do next in that interim period, and I'll step back. In that interim period, I, stayed involved in the law. I wrote a legal blog. I did contract work and consulting. And then when my children were getting older and I was starting to think about what happens when they leave, who am I? What am I going to do with myself? And the thought about going back to that world just was not something that I wanted to do. So I discovered divorce coaching. And I went through a certification, fell in love with it, knew that this was the work I was meant to do, that this was the missing piece for so many people going through divorce, having the ability to have someone to talk to, not just their therapist, not just their lawyer, but somebody who understood what it meant, to what the process means, and then to really help them process those emotions and come up with a plan, strategize, and then start to heal. And so that's what I do as a divorce coach. And that's why I became an entrepreneur and decided to do this work.
Oh, so your work is it's near and dear to my heart because I wish I had you when I was going through my divorce 8 years ago. Um, the work that you do with folks on being able to not only help give them the strategy, right? And obviously they have an attorney that they're working with, but to give them that strategy, but to help with the mindset piece is huge. For me, going through my divorce, I had an infant at the time, and our divorce was messy. It was super messy. Luckily, we're at a space now where we can co-parent very well. I would consider us friends at this point, but at that point, it was really bad. And I loved and admired my attorney, but the mindset piece is something like none other, and that wasn't something that my attorney could give me, right? So what you do is just it's very life-giving for folks that are going through divorce.
Yeah, and I love that you shared, I wish that I had known about divorce coaching or knew you when you were going through it. I hear that so many times from people. And you're right, the legal piece is really important. It's so important to understand what the law says in your particular state, in your particular county, and to have that legal guidance as you go through, whether you do mediation, whether you do collaborative process, or whether you end up in litigation. And especially if you're in litigation, it's I would say it's necessary to have an attorney. Not everybody does. Some people choose to go it on their own, which has its own pitfalls. But the mindset piece is missing because attorneys aren't trained to do that work. They are trained to do the law, to analyze the law, to be very practical and strategic, and to give you their best case scenario, right? And their recommendations. But if you're not in the right headspace, you may not hear it, you may not process it. And then what I've also learned, and what I really love about my newest certification as a trauma-informed mindset and energy practitioner, is that connection between the body and the mind. And what so often happens is that you're so dysregulated when you're going through divorce. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Absolutely.
You are in constant fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And our bodies are not meant to be in that state. And so when you're in that heightened, right, fear, worry, stress, pressure, and then you're also in a corporate position where there's a lot of pressure and stress, that is such, it causes burnout. It causes you to have knee-jerk reactions. You're basically flailing because you're so worried about what's going to happen. And what I'm able to do is to help regulate your nervous system so that you can come to a place where you can make confident decisions, where you can make decisions from a place of pausing and thought, as opposed to, knee-jerk reactions where the consequences aren't thought through, and then there's often regret.
I can remember numerous times leaving meetings and either getting an email from my attorney or a text that I would be receiving an email, and to sit there and read the email on my way home. Somebody else would be driving, I would be driving with colleagues, and I would just honestly lose my mind, like emotional breakdown in the car. And this happened multiple times through that period that I was going through. And working in a high stress job, especially in the corporate world, a lot of us, the way that we cope is to just work harder and work more. And that's what I did. That is what a lot of folks that I know do, still to this day. In the company that I worked at, they had a very high divorce rate. It's not anything, especially when I was in HR, we didn't ever talk about that. But it was, the divorce rate was very, very high. We worked long hours. There was a lot of stress. We took a lot of the work home and a lot of the stress home as well. But, right now we're recording this at the end of November. It's going to air in December, and we're in the holiday season. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, for me, that was one of the toughest seasons. My son is 7 now, and holidays now are a lot easier for me because this is all I've known for his whole life. But I have, friends that are going through divorces now that their kids are a little bit older, and this is their first holiday having to share holidays, with their spouse that they're in the process of divorcing. So talk to us about how people can really get through a holiday season. I would say, I don't want to say successfully, but make it a little less painful, things that they might be able to do and still be successful in their career without having to work, to the point of burnout through the holiday as a way to soothe their hurt that they're feeling.
Absolutely. And so one of the things you said about, throwing yourself into work when you were feeling instead of feeling really, which is buffering, right? So avoiding the pain, which is inevitable, and throwing yourself into work, which then the pain doesn't go away. It just gets buried. And then it pops up elsewhere, right? In when you least expect it. So one of the really important things to do, as I talked about before, about regulating that nervous system. So the holiday time, it's stressful to begin with, whether you're going through a divorce or not. And then you add in separation and divorce, and that stress and pressure is so intense that if you don't take the time to regulate your nervous system, and when I say that, what I mean is one of the easiest ways to do that, and one of the first things I share with clients, is breath work. Just breathing, taking the time to allow yourself to sit and breathe. It gives you that pause before you react. So it allows you to lower that sympathetic, heightened fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state and bring up that parasympathetic state, which is that calm. And then you can respond. So all it takes, literally, you could do it in 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes of just whatever works for you. If you're familiar with breathing, the flagpole 4-4-4 breathing, where you breathe in, hold for 4, and then release for 4. Some people call it box breathing. You can do that, and you'd be amazed at how you're able to just, in that moment, kind of take that pause and then decide, what do I want to do now? As opposed to when you're in that fight or flight, right? And you're activated, you're triggered, and boom, you just react. You don't even have an opportunity to step back and say, wait a minute, what do I want to do? So that's regulating your nervous system is just really important in any stressful period, but especially during the holidays.
This is probably not the first time that my listeners have heard about breathing exercises. And I will tell you that when people say just breathe, or you see, signs in people's houses that say just breathe, you really don't realize how often you are holding your breath.
Absolutely.
Because, you're in the stressful situation and you're holding your breath versus breathing. And if I would have known about breathing exercises during that time of my life, it would have been so much different than it was, because I was one that would have that knee-jerk reaction. I would react, I would explode. And I had a lot of regret, and still do to this day, on some of the things that I said in those moments, to family members, about family members, about my ex, about his family. Like it's, there's just a lot of regret. That breathing, like you said, is just, it's foundational.
Absolutely. And so one of the things to do as well to sort of prepare yourself as much as you can, and there are things that you can't prepare for, is to think ahead, to plan ahead. So planning allows you to sort of minimize the stress and likelihood of being caught off guard. So like deciding how you want to spend the holidays, who you want to spend the holidays with, what traditions you may want to keep, what traditions you may want to change. Maybe you want to skip some things this year, especially if it is your first holiday season where you are separated or divorced. You don't have to do it all. You can choose to say, this year, I'm going to take a pause. Maybe you're not going to do all the things you normally do because you're just not feeling up to it, and that's okay. So really, but planning that ahead so that when people ask you, you're not caught off guard. And that kind of leads me into the next thing that's really important is communication. So communicating with your soon-to-be ex or your ex as to what the expectations, what the plans are. And if you have a parenting plan already, kind of reviewing that. And then if you need to make changes or you want to make changes, to ask for those as far in advance as you can, but without attachment to the outcome. And what I mean by that is we so often want our soon-to-be ex or our ex to do something. And when they say no, we are so disappointed and frustrated and angry because we wanted them to say yes. So we ask it with the expectation, with the attachment to the yes. And when we get a no, we take it personally. And so my suggestion is to make the request, because if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? But that if you do get a no, to not take that personally and to step back and be able to figure out, okay, yes, that's disappointing, and then feel your feelings, but don't let it spin you out, because that will just carry over into future interactions with that co-parent. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Going through the process, a lot of folks, and I can speak, from my personal experience, we want to keep things the way they always have been. We want to keep that sense of normalcy, and having that thought process sometimes can cause more harm than good, because like you said, there will be times where it's a give and take, right? It's definitely a give and take, and things are going to change a little bit. For me, one of the hardest things was getting my family to realize that too, because my parents have been married for 40 years, and it's just they've not personally gone through this, or had someone close to them going through divorce or separation. So that can be tough as well. How do you help your clients with that piece of navigating holidays and change, as a whole family versus just maybe your immediate family?
Yeah, absolutely. So going to the extended family, one of the tools that I've recently been using with my clients and they've found really effective, and actually you can use this tool whether you're going through divorce or not, is signing a no complaint agreement. And my clients have been loving this, because what that is you, for 30 days during the holiday period, during the holiday season, you're agreeing with yourself not to complain, not to gossip, not to talk negatively about other people or situations. And so that keeps you in that higher level energy. And so it also, when you share that with your family members, when they want to talk about your soon-to-be ex, or they want to talk about, Uncle Joe or Aunt Mary, or, oh my God, can you believe, right? Because misery loves company and people love to gossip. But what that does is it really keeps you in that low level energy. And so while it might feel good in the moment to bash your ex or soon-to-be ex, it does leave you feeling defeated in some ways, and that low level negativity carries with you afterwards. So when you agree ahead of time that I'm not going to engage in that kind of behavior, discussions, communication, it really allows you to avoid other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, feelings, right? Interfering with what you and your co-parent perhaps have decided is best for your immediate family, but maybe is not understood by your extended family. And even if you are feeling frustrated and upset and angry with your soon-to-be ex or your ex, talking about it fuels that instead of diffuses it. And so when you sign this agreement to not complain, you are diffusing, you are taking away that fuel, and it allows you to remain neutral and even have some joy in the holiday season.
That is genius.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine how many holidays, even in a situation where there's not a divorce or separation happening, how many holidays would be different for folks
Absolutely.
if they had made that commitment? Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. So talk to us about maybe some more things that you might come across with your clients, because you're definitely the expert in this area. I can just talk about my personal experiences. But tell us more about like how you help people to get through the holidays, or what tips you might have for our listeners.
So one of the other things that kind of goes along with the communication and the no complaining agreement is being really clear on your boundaries. Boundaries with yourself, boundaries with your employees or your employer, your coworkers, your extended family, your soon-to-be ex or your ex. And oftentimes people are confused a little bit about what a boundary is. And so how I like to explain it is boundaries are the space between loving yourself and the person you're setting the boundary with. And when I say loving the person who you're setting the boundary with, it's not love in that romantic sense. It's love for that person as a human being, that compassion. It is not an angry electric fence. So, and a lot of people, like, they set this boundary and they're like, right? Like, if this person doesn't do that, then, I'm going to be so, yell at them or be really forceful with what it is I want. And that's really not the intention. It's not that angry electric fence. It's more of, this is what I need. So for example, if you have a co-parent who is coming into your home, for example, and that is causing you a lot of stress and frustration, because when they come into your home, they tend to berate you or want to get into conversations in front of the children, and they tend to escalate. A way to set a boundary is to say, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. And in fact, I think we should have this conversation, but not during drop-offs and pickups. If you're going to continue to have this conversation during drop-off and pickups, you're not going to be able to come into my home. We're going to have to change how this pickup and drop-off happens. That's just one example. You can do that with a phone call as well, right? Like, if you're going to continue to yell and scream, I'm going to hang up the phone. It's not, you better stop, or, right? It's, I'm not available to be talked to that way, so I'm going to hang up the phone, or I'm going to ask you to leave. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And boundaries are so important in that whole process, because I think for me and for, folks that I know that have gone through divorce, it's definitely something that is like a long-lasting skill set, right? When it comes to a good co-parenting relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another tip for dealing with your co-parent is oftentimes I hear from clients concerns, fears, worry around gift giving and the Disneyland parent, and which is, a parent who showers the children with lots of monetary items, right? Fancy gifts and expensive gifts, or big trips. And sometimes you can't afford to do that, but yet you feel like you have to in order to keep up, right? In order to quote, earn your children's love, because there's so much fear around what if they love the other parent more than they love me, or when other partners get introduced into the mix. So this is, you may have been separated, you may have been divorced for a while, and there's new partners in the picture. So step parents, stepmothers, stepfathers, and there's fears around what if that person takes my place, or what if they love that parent more. And so what I remind clients about, and this is a really important piece to kind of take away, is children love the time they spend with you more than the things they get from you. They remember those moments of connection. They won't remember 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the fancy gadget that they got for Christmas, but they will remember those memories that you built, those the time that you spent together baking cookies or singing, Christmas carols or Hanukkah songs, or the craft that you made, or maybe going and delivering goods to a homeless shelter. Those are the things that they will remember more than the actual financial expensive item that you may have purchased for them.
Oh, there's so much truth in that. The amount of comparison, right, that we place on ourselves as parents, if there's not kids in the mix, there's still some comparison, is something that I think folks will deal with for a while until they realize it doesn't have to be like this. And it truly is the memories. And then you get into where kids then know how to play the game, right? And say, well, at daddy's house or at mommy's house, and that always plays into it. So, the boundary piece, the communication piece is so instrumental in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I wanted to mention to your listeners is when you are thinking about gift giving to your children, what I have seen happen is a parent will give a gift to their child and not allow them to take that gift to their other parent's house. And this can be really damaging to your children. And this is something that I learned from a child expert. Parenting Apart, I believe, is the book. And the way that she explained it is, it's when you give your child a gift with conditions, it's like your boss giving you a bonus and saying, here are the keys to this amazing sports car. You've earned it, right? But you can only drive it in the parking lot of our office building. You can't take it anywhere else, right? It's conditioned. It takes all of the excitement out of it, right? Who wants to have a car that they can only drive around the parking lot? It's kind of the same thing when you give your child a gift, but then you say, but you can't take it to daddy's house, or you can't take it to mommy's house, right? It's the same thought around that.
It is. Oh my gosh. Oh, I think, going through this process, I can't say we ever did that with toys necessarily. But in the beginning, it's really easy to say, well, those are clothes for my house. And, I bought you that. It needs to come back. And you're right. It does. It kind of plays games with the kids.
Yeah. So one suggestion I have for that, because there are situations where you may really genuinely be worried that the other parent is irresponsible and isn't going to take care of an expensive item. And that, is something, is a legitimate concern. So my suggestion is not to give it as a gift to your child. You can just have it in your household, or maybe it's a family gift if your family does that. So it's not just, this is a gift for you. It's a separate from, you give them their other gifts, but then there's a family gift. And so if it's a family gift for that household, then it kind of makes sense that it doesn't leave the household. So that's one way to sort of get around the giving the gift, but with conditions of you can't bring it anywhere but here.
Oh, that's good advice. That's really good advice. So when it comes to navigating, I think about going back and forth, having different holidays, right? If you're in a co-parenting situation, and then navigating a work schedule on top of that. I know for me, it took me a while to understand that just because my son wasn't with me on Christmas morning didn't mean we couldn't have a Christmas morning. So we ended up pivoting to Christmas Eve morning. That is when we would actually, on his list to Santa, we would say, I'm going to be at my mommy's on this day. Could you come? And he would ask Santa to come on Christmas Eve morning. And, there's just so many different things. Do you have any like tips or things that you might have heard that your clients do that could help people make those pieces a little bit easier?
So I love that you do that. And I love that you're sort of built new traditions, because kids don't necessarily need to celebrate on the day, right? It can be the day after or the day before, even several days before or after. So exercising flexibility and patience are going to be really important, because things are going to come up. Things are going to be different. Your co-parent might be late or might do something that is not part of your parenting plan, and you're going to be upset and frustrated and angry about it. But being able to sort of step back and taking that pause, that breath, and recognizing this is just 1 year. This is only one holiday of many holidays. And then having that flexibility to be able to say, okay, maybe it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, or maybe it's not going to be the way it's always been, but we can create new traditions. And so one story that I like to tell about a client who didn't have their children on Christmas, and always had the big Christmas celebration with the big family dinner and all the trimmings. And they were feeling really sad about that and really disappointed. And what they started to do is that when they did have their children, they started a new tradition. The children were like, could you teach us how you always made grandma's lasagna? And so the new tradition was, when they would celebrate the Christmas holiday with their mom, instead of having that big holiday dinner, they would together make this family lasagna that was like a recipe that had been passed down. And that was the new tradition. So it doesn't have to be that, but just coming up with new ways to celebrate, it's okay, right? It's okay to do things differently, because life is different. It's just the nature of divorce. Things will be different, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad.
Oh, yes. Yes. Things are different, but the bright side is, especially if you're in the thick, right, of a separation or going through divorce this holiday season, just know that it will get better and it gets easier. And honestly, it gets fun. It gets to be really fun too.
And it does if you allow it to, right? If you're
Yes.
open to that possibility. And you're right, it may not feel like it now, but if you're open to being open, if you're open to the possibility that one day things will feel joyful even, right? And peaceful, it will happen. The other thing that's really important to remember is divorce does not harm children. Conflict does. So 10 years from now, your kids are not going to remember who they spent a particular holiday with, but they will remember the fight that you and your co-parent had about it. And I think that's really powerful to think about when you're getting into conversations and with your soon-to-be ex or your ex, and it's escalating, that it's the conflict, not the actual divorce, that will be lasting on your children.
I hope that little tidbit right there really sinks into to those of you that are listening that might be going through this, or maybe you're just coming out of the hard times of divorce, but really just listening to that, because it is such great advice, and it's the truth. It truly is. So, Sharri, when it comes to, I'll just say me, when it comes to your clients, right? And they're learning how to, I'll say self-care, right? Like what to do with themselves, their time now that they have by themselves. And maybe that's during the holiday season. What are some things that you might suggest to folks on how to like really connect with yourself again and
Yeah.
that be okay and not feel guilty about it?
Yeah. So self-care is really important. And taking care of yourself is actually not selfish. It actually allows you to be a better parent. It allows you to be a better employee. It allows you to be a better boss. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not at 100%, you can't possibly give 100%. So having that self-care, taking that time, scheduling that time into your calendar, especially during the holidays, is going to be really important. And the self-care doesn't have to be bubble baths and manicures and massages. It can be, but it can also just be solitude. It can be giving yourself time and space to read a book, take a walk, connect with nature, doing your breath work every day, doing some meditation, yoga, working out, if that's helps. A lot of people, working out is their kind of go-to self-care. Making sure that you have that scheduled, because it's so easy to skip it. It's so easy to skip yourself in favor of your children or your job. And it's really doing everyone a disservice when you do that. So my suggestion is scheduling every single day, a minimum of 10 minutes, longer if you can allow that, have that space in your calendar, but at least 10 minutes every day of doing something that helps fill you up, refuels your tank. That's going to be really, really important as you move through the holiday season. And it also will help you when you do get activated, because when you are hungry, when you're tired, when you are really stressed out, you're not making good decisions. And so when you get activated, your fuse is really short and you tend to snap. But if you have been practicing self-care, if you have been doing your breath work, if you've been giving yourself the love and attention that you need, you're much more likely to be able to respond in those moments rather than react.
I would add that if you're listening to this and you have a day off work or multiple days off work and your kids are with your ex or soon to be ex, do not feel guilty that you are taking some time for yourself. Whole days, couple days, you can reconnect with friends, reconnect with yourself, find yourself in this moment, because that is so, so, so important. Do not just drown yourself in work. You are totally worthy of having that space for yourself.
Absolutely. And guilt is a feeling that comes from a thought, right? And so if you're familiar with the thought loop, right, when you think, I should be doing, I needed to be doing, I need to be doing something else, doing work, or I'm so sad that my kids aren't with me, and you're feeling guilty about it, right? And then your behavior is you pour yourself into work, for example, buffering, pouring yourself into work. And then as a result, you're exhausted because you haven't refilled your cup. You've actually depleted it. And then you having feelings of guilt, right? I'm so tired. And then when your kids come back to you, you're exhausted. And so just to your point, it's okay to have the day to yourself and to actually be happy about it and to allow yourself to feel that joy and have that peace. And I have had clients say that to me, like, I feel a little guilty, the fact that I was able to hand my kids off to my ex because I was so tired. I just needed the time, but yet I was feeling so guilty about it. And again, right, you don't have to feel guilty about it because you are single parenting in many instances. And to have a break, you're deserving of a break. You're worthy of a break. And a break doesn't mean pouring yourself into work. A break means pouring yourself into you, taking a rest, taking a nap during the day, right? Novel thought. Can you really take a nap during the day? Yes. You can sleep all day if you want to, because the next day you're going to be so much more refreshed and refueled, and you'll be able to get so much more done in less time than if you're push, 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 go, go, go.
Sharri, I absolutely love you. I love the work that you do in this world. I don't think that I could tell you that enough, quite honestly. So do you have any like closing advice for folks? And then I want you to tell all the listeners where they can find you. And if you have, anything going on come, first of the year that you want to let them know about, it's your time.
Sure. So I would just like to remind everybody that divorce is painful. It's inevitable. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You do not have to suffer. So I will kind of leave those parting words. The way that people can connect with me, I can be found on Instagram. I am your divorce coach on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group. If you just go to my personal profile, you can find out all that information on Facebook. I have a website, potomaccoaching.com. And coming in, so I work with clients one-to-one. I do have a 4-week, 1-month intensive. I also have a 6-month coaching program one-to-one. And then I'm also have group coaching, which is coming for 2023. I do not have all the details yet, but it's going to be a really amazing group coaching program that really focuses on connecting to yourself and finding yourself again, which it's just going to be a phenomenal program. So I'm really excited about that.
I am so excited to see the impact that program makes. I've watched you in this transformation over the last year as you have taken more steps to elevate your coaching and how you serve the world. And I'm super excited to see you roll this out. Oh, so
thank you.
For those of you listening, I will drop links in the show notes. So feel free to follow Sharri on social media. You can check out her website. I'm sure she will have all the information come 2023 on that new group coaching program. And if I could just do a little plug for Sharri, make sure that if you're in this situation where you are going through divorce or separation, this is definitely an investment in yourself and in your family, and quite honestly, in your health that you do not want to miss. So, Sharri, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Amanda.
If you're looking for more information on how to work with me, you can check out my website at amandamcquarter.net and look at different offerings that I have and some freebies that might be of value to you. If you're on social media, feel free to follow me at Amanda K. McQuarter on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.